I'm going to record this for broadcast on my site or maybe on YouTube. So anyway, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming along to today's In Conservation With. And my guest today is the lovely Dawn Balmer, who's a very old friend of mine. And we'll talk and introduce Dawn in a second. But housekeeping quickly. I think you're all in mute anyway. I think I managed to have this control over everyone apart from Simon Taylor. I don't think he's actually on mute. If you have any questions, and please feel free to ask questions. And by the way, you can all hear me, yeah? It's all good, yeah? If you have any questions, please, if you're using a laptop, you should have at the bottom a thing that says participants, I think. And you can use that to wave, put your hand up, and then I'll see your hand, hopefully. And also, if you're using a tablet, I believe it's on the right-hand side under the three little buttons. There's three little dots there or something, so you can actually join that way. So that's the housekeeping. I've asked if you can record it, which is good. So we can fire away. So let me introduce you, firstly, everyone, to Dawn Balmer. Hello, Dawn. How you doing?
Hi, David. Good, thanks.
You can hear Dawn as well? Yeah? Good. Now, before Dawn speaks to us, let me just introduce you to Dawn in case you don't know who Dawn is. I want to talk to you and tell you who Dawn is as a woman. By the way, have you got half an hour? Because I'll tell you what, the stuff she's done. Dawn is a mother and a wife. She's also a mad keen birder. She's a ringer, she's a naturalist, and she's a photographer. All right? Her job description, she does work for, should I say, the British Trust for Ornithology. And she's been there since the devil was a boy. In fact, I used to work at the British Trust for Ornithology. I was about 6 years old and she was there for like 50 years before me. So she's been there a long time. Her job description reads like three people's jobs. She basically, she runs most of the large scale surveys, including the wetland bird survey, the breeding bird survey, bird track, waterway breeding bird survey, as well as the heronry census. And as if that wasn't enough, she also maintains and organises the BTOs, the British Trust for Ornithologists, network of volunteer regional representatives, plus, as if that wasn't enough, plus she has responsibility for the regional conferences. Now, she's had a long-term interest in migration and movement of birds, and I can vouch for that, and population dynamics, and was the Atlas Atlas coordinator for the Bird Atlas of 2007-2011. She is also the secretary of the European Bird Census Council. She's a chair of the Rare Breeding Birds panel. She's an editorial board member of British Birds, that venerable publication. She's also a trustee of the Eric Hoskins Charitable Trust, and she, in case she has a bit of time, she writes regularly for the British Wildlife magazine and for Sandgrouse, which is the membership magazine for the for the Ornithological Society of the Middle East. So she's got her hands filled. Do you have any time for anything else, Dawn?
David, I should add, I've got a fantastic team that I work with who actually run those key surveys. So I just like to oversee the projects. Okay.
Well, listen, let's talk about surveys. Obviously, you are the head of surveys. You work for the British Trust for Ornithology. Can you actually, for everyone here, just break down what we're talking about? What's the history of surveys? What are surveys?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, many of you will know that one of sort of BTO's key points is that we organise with wide and broad scale national surveys. So we organise surveys that tell us about population trends. So we have long-running projects like the Breeding Bird Survey and Waterways Breeding Bird Surveys going since the early 90s, and in fact even longer before that, the Common Bird Census. So we can get really long-term pictures back to the 60s actually, showing the population trends of common and widespread birds in the UK. And these tell us fascinating pictures of species which are increasing over time and decreasing or remaining stable. And my colleagues produce brilliant reports like this every year, Breeding Bird Survey, which tells us exactly what's happening to about 110 common and widespread species. So that's sort of the population trend side of it. BTO also, we also run the wetland bird survey, which keeps tabs on wetland birds throughout the winter and the breeding season. And again, amazing volunteers take part in that too. We also run the bird ringing scheme. So I used to work in the bird ringing department as part of my history of working at BTO, but you'll be well familiar with people who are licensed to fit rings on birds. And that tells us about the movements of birds, migration, but really importantly, it tells us about breeding success and survival, which are really sort of key parts of when we're coming to understand why population trends are doing well. And also bird ringing. Bird ringing tells us about survival and productivity, and nest records scheme. So some of you will know that we have really skilled volunteers that are able to find nests of birds and record the contents. And through that, again, we find out information about breeding success. So these are really our sort of key projects that we run. You'll know that this year is obviously, because of coronavirus, we're not doing our surveys at the moment, other than anything we can do in our garden. So that's what we're going to come on to chat about later. So yeah, it's a really frustrating time for us when we would normally be out doing our bird surveys. My surveys squares are just up the road, actually, in Thetford Forest. I've been doing those since 1993. So it's a fantastic opportunity for me to really get to know a site and see the birds change from year to year, the comings and goings, and also how actually, because it's in the forest it changes itself. So it's a shame not to be going out there this year, but we're best staying in.
So out of all the surveys that you've just discussed, what level of involvement is involved in each of them? I mean, obviously some are far more sort of time consuming than others.
Yeah, sure. So I think, at the simplest level, there are things like the heronry survey, where you just really need to be able to identify a big grey bird, a grey heron, and to be able to look for nests in sort of February and March time. So that's a really straightforward survey. And actually, WEBS, the Wetland Bird Survey, can be pretty straightforward if you cover a small site, a small pond or lake, for example. But we wouldn't put you out on the wash as a starting point, where there's hundreds of thousands of birds in winter. And we'll come and chat about the garden birds, but watch a bit later on too, which you can do in your garden. So yeah, I mean, for the breeding bird survey, we really ask volunteers to be able to identify common birds by sight and sound. So yeah, reasonable level of competence for the BBS.
And what's the most sort of time draining survey you can do if you've got the time?
Oh, that's a difficult one, David, because volunteers put in enormous efforts. Like my BBS squares, I say, are just up the road in Thetford Forest. I can be there in sort of 20 minutes. But some people make huge efforts, climbing mountains in Scotland. Some even cycle in. They camp the night before, just to be able to access some of these really, remote squares. So it varies a lot.
So talk me through the process if you wanted to do a breeding bird survey, for example. How do you find an area? I mean, firstly, what is the area made of?
Yeah, sure.
How do you find one that's close to your home?
Okay, so a breeding bird survey square is a 1 kilometre square, and they're actually randomly generated. So we have a nice website you can go to on the BTO website, and you can click sort of find a square for BBS, and it'll drill down and show you 10 kilometre squares where we've got vacancies, and it puts you in touch with your local regional organiser for the BBS, and they will discuss where the vacant squares are near you. But so it's definitely not self-selecting. You can't choose your favourite patch down the road, which is why, it's important, because it means we can cover all habitats and urban sites that you'd probably enjoy covering, David, but also the tops of mountains, forests, farmlands, everything. That's one of the key points of the BBS.
And talking about urban sites, would the squares cover practically everything? So in other words, my patch could also include a housing estate or a trading estate or something?
Absolutely, yeah. Everything. So yeah, they're randomly selected sites, so it could be anything.
And tell us more about the I'm doing a very broad stroke of all these surveys until someone's got any questions. So I'm going to just talk as if no one knows anything about surveys, if you don't mind, because I think never, as far as I'm concerned, never assume knowledge, because I think we all can learn things that we've never thought of, even though we think we know the subject. But when it comes to the wetland bird survey, how does that work?
So yeah, WEBS is completely different in that it is site-based. So it could be a duck pond down your road. I used to cover a really small site that had very small numbers of birds. It can be a stretch of a river, a lake, reservoir. It can also be one of the key major estuaries around the country of hundreds of thousands of birds. So the key point is to cover the major sites for our water birds around the UK. So, but it's important as well that we cover all kinds of sites. So there are some species that are thinly spread across the environment, like moorhen's a good example. It doesn't need much to support a moorhen. So even sort of just damp flashes, which might have snipe, for example, they're all good to cover. So that's what I say, skill level can be, you can be a beginner and find a little patch near you that's not covered for webs and potentially take part and count the coot and mallard and mute swan, really straightforward birds.
And again, that's a random thing in terms of what territory you get.
Well, it's site-based, so you're looking for sites that are vacant. So we do have a good network of volunteers that cover websites already, and they make monthly counts, and most people count throughout the winter, but we do really encourage counts in the summertime as well, because some of the species that pass through the UK, for example, like sanderling, actually the numbers peak in May as they're heading to their breeding grounds in the north. So a count in midwinter is good, but yeah, May's a peak time for sanderling. So getting year-round counts is really important.
And I can see I know one or two people here actually, looking around the motley crew. But one of them I know for sure is an avid bird track user. Can you explain bird track? Because the thing is, in Spain, for example, people tend to use eBird, as they do in America, obviously. And bird track, I suppose, is very UK-centric. And not many people I know, I don't know how many of you guys who do census or use sort of these apps to collate what you've seen. I don't know how many of you use eBird, but how does bird track work, and how does it differ to eBird?
Yeah, so bird track, eBird, they're all sort of portals for collecting data. There's also things like Ornitho in Germany, Tractellen. Many different countries across Europe especially have their own portal. And essentially they're collecting bird lists or casual records. So actually eBird and bird track are very similar. You can go out birding, it could just be into your garden and write a list over 20 minutes of all the birds you see and hear and stick it into bird track or eBird. And that's a complete list. I could just look out now. Actually, I can see there's a wood pigeon on my garden. If I wanted to, I could just put a single record in of a wood pigeon in my garden. So it's really to record your records as you want them. So it's a tool just to enable you to collect your information. And what's loving at the moment actually is seeing on social media people who are sort of stuck at home are going back to their notebooks, back to the 60s, for example, and starting to input all their records into bird track, which must be great for sort of reliving memories of good birding days out.
And what about, obviously a lot of us are locked down, and obviously, as you said earlier, many of us will not be able to legitimately visit our areas if we're doing surveys. Is there anything we can do which is not random, but just basically, as you say, you've got wood pigeon in your garden. Is there anything we can do in terms of seeing stuff in our gardens and hearing stuff and actually putting it, putting notes down somewhere and sending it on somewhere so that they can be collated somewhere? Is that? Yeah,
so I think actually, I've been working at home now for a month. So usually at lunchtime, in fact, I went out today at lunchtime and had half an hour eating my lunch. So I just got a piece of paper, my notebook, and started writing down everything I saw, and only had, typical for me in sort of half an hour in my suburban Thetford garden is 17, 18 species. But we did get a good bird today fly over, which my husband spotted. A kestrel flew over. So I just made that complete list with a start time of 12:30. I finished at 1:15. So I entered that into BirdTrack along, my complete list, and submitted that. So we've got a garden list. Our garden list, I think, is, our garden list is 91. We've been here for 13 years. And we've been making a lockdown list as well since we've been working from home from the 24th of March, and we're on 47, as the Kestrel today puts on 47. So, that's just for our bit of fun and entertainment whilst we're stuck at home. But I think those complete lists into BirdTrack, be it from your garden, or if you go out on your sort of daily exercise walk, there's nothing to stop you from recording the birds you see and hear whilst you're doing your walk or your cycle or run or whatever you want to.
Because I've been stuck, as I said, for 36 days in my apartment here in Extremadura in southwest Spain, and I've got a sun terrace, and I've been doing a lockdown list as well, which I actually put on eBird, and I've now got 35 species, the latest of which was last week when I was watching this amazing series on Netflix called Ozark, and I needed to open the window to get some fresh air because I was getting pretty stressed. And it was 1:30 in the morning, and as I opened the window, I heard a stone curlew fly past. It was like amazing. And then the other day, I had a golden oriole fly over my head whilst I sat on top of my sun terrace, because I haven't got much vision of the sky, so I tend to just try and see what I can. And most of the birds I see are large birds of prey or storks. I've got a message here from James Cutting. Good afternoon, sir. And he's saying, my parents are sending me daily lists and getting me to upload on BirdCast.
Good stuff.
Now, anyone else out there doing any kind of British Trust for Ornithology surveys? I know you're pretty shy, but you can actually speak if you want. And if you want to talk, just unblock yourself. Or do I have to do that?
Charlie's raised a hand.
Oh, Maya. Hello, Maya. How are you, by the way?
I'm good, thank you. And you?
First time I've ever spoken to you, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it is.
And Maya, I'm honoured.
Oh, thank you. And me too. I've been doing bird ringing for about 5 years, I think now. I obviously do BirdTrack when I see anything. I'm Garden Birdwatch Ambassador now, so I've been doing that at school. And also in my garden, I've been doing it since lockdown. Got a lockdown list as well, which is about 40, I think, which is pretty good. I did a bit of a bird race yesterday for the Sussex Wildlife Trust.
Bird race? You were locked down?
Yeah, lockdown bird race there in my garden.
Kind of a big sit.
Yeah. Got about 18 species, I think, which is not bad. I'm in sort of a town, suburban garden, so yeah, it's not bad.
Yeah, for those who don't know, Maya's an up-and-coming person for the future. I've been watching your stuff on Twitter because you've been putting a lot of stuff up about what you've been seeing.
Yeah, I have, yeah.
One for the future, guys. Check her out. She'll be sitting there one day.
Hopefully.
I mean, something else we've been doing, Dave, is back in early April when people were starting to hear common scoters fly over at night. We stood out a few evenings and actually added teal and widgeon to our house list and a moorhen. So, we've had 3 new species just by standing outside the back door at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. And we had a 2 mandarin fly over last week. So we've actually added 4 new species to our garden list since being stuck at home.
Fantastic. Anyone else got any interesting things they've recorded over their houses or lockdown domains? Don't be shy.
Red kite over Portsmouth from Kaylee.
Again?
Kaylee says a red kite over Portsmouth. And a redwing and a tawny owl from Charlie.
Oh yeah, okay. See, I'm sorry, I'm getting used to this Zoom stuff. Yeah, tawny owl, and also Claire Evans. Her list is 18. What have you had in your list, Claire? So
it's really exciting. It's all just the standard sort of garden birds. So
they're all exciting.
I don't get to see an awful lot. I have got a park area close to me where I'm more likely to hear warblers. I think I heard a blackcap earlier in the week, and occasionally I get flyovers. So I'm counting flyovers, which I wouldn't normally count during Big Garden Birdwatch. So I'm adding a few more. But I think my my total birding list here is not that large. Certainly not up in the 90s. I'd love to get something like that.
And Jonathan had a snipe over his Wilt's garden. Jonathan, where are you? You're not visible, are you? Can you talk? Jonathan? Jonathan? No, you don't talk. Okay.
Hello? Hello?
Oh, you can talk. Hello,
Yes,
Jonathan.
yes.
So, hello. Thank you for coming, by the way. Thanks for
That's
joining in. So you had a snipe. That's amazing. Tell us
Yes,
more
it
about
was,
your garden list.
It was dusk about a week ago. I heard it calling and it flew over just before sunset. It's in North Wiltshire.
Are you kind of suburban or
It's actually in a village, so adjacent. We're not very far from the Cotswold Water Park, which is quite good for obviously water birds. So I guess it may have been a bird from that area, perhaps been on passage.
Superb. And do you actually do any surveys yourself?
Yes, the winter the water bird survey once a month.
Cool.
I cover a few of the gravel pits in the Cotswold Water Park.
Brilliant. Thank you.
So which is, it's interesting to see the sort of change in species through the seasons in the same area.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
You really get to know your patch, don't you?
Yes, which is good.
Yeah.
How long have you been birding, Jonathan? Sorry.
Quite a long time, actually. It's basically since I was more or less at school, I think.
Cool.
Just, I think once you get into it, you can't, it's a bit addictive, really, isn't it?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. And I think I've veered more towards sort of watching a local area and away from looking for rarities further afield, because it's more satisfying to sort of find your own birds, I think, and watch things changing.
I think it's
an area.
Yeah, it's much better that way. I mean, I used to twitch a lot when I was younger, until I realised, and I quite famously said this, but it felt like a series of really bad one-night stands, because you kind of thought to see the bird, and when you see it, you think, is that it? But anyway, I think it's really interesting because my local patch, Wormwood Scrubs, which is 1,300 miles away, by the way, now, but I've been going there for 20 odd years, and to see the changes in populations of various species over that period of time is fascinating.
Yes, yeah.
You don't realise immediately, but when you keep notes on a regular basis, every visit you make, you just keep these notes. You can look back a year later and sort of start working out when you're going to be first seeing wheat ears passing through and stuff like that. But then on top of that, you can actually realise that certain species have either increased or decreased. I mean, for example, over that time period, we lost bullfinches. There were, I think, 3 pairs of bullfinches, and they were finally extirpated maybe 5 or 6 years into my watching the area.
Oh, right.
And then other species have increased. So it is a real case of ups and downs. And as Dawn would obviously back me up, I mean, a lot of this information that we supply then goes to be used, hopefully, in order to protect
yes, indeed,
locations as well as species.
Yeah, absolutely. David, Ruth just had a question about house martins, actually, and she mentioned a few minutes ago, she's asking, she's seen a few, but when are we going to expect more? And I was going to say, actually, one of the really good things about Bird Track is that if you put your records into Bird Track, especially the complete list, every night they feed directly into a project called Eurobird Portal, which takes records from all these different portals across Europe, feeds it in, and overnight generates new maps of where the migrants are. So it's really exciting at this time of year. Like if you're waiting for more house martins to arrive, to go and have a look at Euro Portal and just it runs dynamic maps day by day, showing the location of where house martins are recording. So so Swift would be a good one at the moment. There's a few Swifts just in. I saw 3 yesterday actually, but the bulk is still to come, so into early May. So you check out Eurobird Portal, you'll see where the Swifts are. That they could be with you actually, David, in Spain, and they're on the way. And it's really exciting to have a look. And you can do the same with winter birds, departing the redwings and the fieldfares that are on their way back north. I saw 25 fieldfares on Sunday, on their way back to their breeding grounds. And that's why I love migration so much. That coming and going, and the weather patterns as well, and what might be holding them up. Like cold northeasterly winds we've got here at the moment will definitely be blocking some migration.
But going back to your question on house martins, Ruth, I'm in Extremadura. Do you know Extremadura? You're live, by the way, caller. Maybe not actually. Hang on a sec. You're mute. Say that again. Can't hear you. Is your volume up?
Can you hear us now?
I can hear you now. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm Ruth's dad. Just in case you're wondering. Yeah. I've been to Extremadura, my wife and I, a few times, but we're sort of people who like walking and seeing birds, but we wouldn't want to say we know much about them really. But we have been keeping a lockdown in our house where Ruth and her daughter are staying with us, and you know, just we're just outside Cardiff, really, the first village outside Cardiff. So I've been keeping my eye on the skies for the house martins, but you know, I didn't know about bird tracks, so that would be a way of, you know, knowing roughly when they might be appearing in larger numbers. Sorry, I'll stop talking now.
No, you keep.
No, cool.
Basically, I was going to say about house martins. Where I am in Extremadura, the house martins never really disappear. I mean, even in the middle of winter, there's always one or two around. And last year, they bred in a village, which is about 45 minutes from where I am, on December the 23rd. They were nesting. And I have, right as we speak, I've got 3 nests on my tiny balcony, and they've been there for a month now. So they're probably fledging now. So the house martins are on the way. There's tons of them here. They're moving on. And the swifts, Dawn, I had a whole, because every day I sit on my sun terrace for an hour during the afternoon. And last week I had a really terrific passage of common swifts, all belting north, loads of them just heading north. But the pallid swifts are just floating around here. So unfortunately, none's coming your way yet. But I'll try to see if I can get it that way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Dawn, you were talking also about it's not just birds that you survey.
Yeah, so I mean, we were going to talk about garden birdwatch as well. So at the moment we've got an offer. You can join our garden birdwatch scheme for free. It's normally a subscription project. It's been going 25 years actually. We're just celebrating 25 years, and it's you actually record on a weekly basis. So it goes throughout the year, and you record the maximum number of each species you see per week into a website or on paper form. So it's really simple to take part, and over the years it's given us, you know, really fascinating information on, well, things like greenfinches. Obviously through trichomoniasis in 2006, their numbers plummeted, and we saw that really quickly in the garden birdwatch data coming in. And also, in contrast, the rise in the population of goldfinches. We all see loads of goldfinches now, and that shows really nicely in the garden birdwatch trends. And just by recording, you know, really simply on that week-to-week basis, the birds in your garden. And you also can see how birds use your garden at different times of the year. And you get these very nice patterns of bird usage. But garden bird watchers, they don't just record birds as well. They can record other taxa into the garden birdwatch scheme. And, you know, many people like myself are, you know, we're into birds, but we like other stuff too. So actually today I just put a list into the, it's called Butterfly Conservation are running the Garden Butterfly Survey. And actually it was incredibly quick and simple to quickly just sort of register your garden and add a list of butterflies that you see in your garden. And I'll probably try and do that really regularly on these nice sunny days we're having, because it's a really good way. It's a new initiative, fairly new initiative, to just get better information on butterflies in gardens. And there's another one about plants that is called the Garden Wildflower Hunt. That is new for 2020, which I think they've, during this sort of lockdown period, this is the Botanical Society for the British Isles, BSBI. They've got, again, a really simple little online survey where you can record wildflowers or weeds in your garden. So I input some daisies and dandelions, nettles, groundsel, that sort of, you know, really common things that most of us can identify into that website. So there's lots of other ways, you know, you can input really valuable data that's not about birds. I'm sure we enjoy the other wildlife in our garden.
Yeah, so we should be encouraging our neighbours, our lockdown neighbours, to be recording stuff, because, you know, so many people say to me, I mean, obviously now with this whole lockdown scenario, people are suddenly saying, oh my God, there's birds. And there's so many of them. Because they kind of think that they've suddenly come out because of coronavirus, when in reality, they are stuck in one place, they're not doing much, and now they're actually hearing stuff that normally goes on, but perhaps better because there's no traffic or planes and trains going past. So, you know, I suppose we need to encourage those people, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, there's great potential. As you're right, people are at home spending a lot more time and noticing things and hearing things. I noticed on social media, Ed Druitt was talking about how fewer cars are on the road, and he's actually hearing so much more volume in the dawn chorus at the moment. That's really exciting to hear. I mean, around me, the dawn chorus is just dominated by wood pigeons. Actually, they're so noisy here. A lady popped up to say she doesn't see greenfinches anymore, and I remember, hearing greenfinches all the time, singing, and now it's such a rare sound.
Yeah, it's interesting on the greenfinch thing, because in central London, you're more likely to see a greenfinch than you are a house sparrow. I mean, most of the small birds you see flying around are greenfinches, quite weirdly. And my dawn chorus at the Scrubs in West London is dominated by my very good friends, the rose-winged parakeets, the birds I love so much. Anyone else got any questions there at all? All right, because I know we're talking about surveys, but I want to ask Dawn a couple of other questions to do with...
Claire's got a question.
Oh, where? Oh, yeah, Claire. Sorry, I saw your hand. Sorry. Claire.
Yeah, Dawn, what always fascinates and amazes me is I know some of the guys that do local web surveys is how you do the counts, how they can get an accurate count of the numbers just by looking at a flock of birds flying across.
Yeah, I guess that's really where experience comes in, isn't it? So if over time you do get much used to counting birds in flocks. I mean, to be honest, big sites like say the Wash and the Dee, they are major undertakings to count, and they're often undertaken by teams of people, because it's pretty hard to count sort of 50,000 knot, for example. Smaller flocks, actually the 25 fieldfares that flew over the other day, that's a good example. They fly over quick, so you're counting, and I was counting in blocks of 5, just quickly put my binoculars up and tried to go 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, and there might have been 23 or there might have been 26, but you've only got that split second to make that count of birds passing through. But birds on the ground.
So you get used to what 5 looks like, what 10 looks like, and what 20 looks like.
Yeah,
because they tend to sort of come up with the 340 or 560, and is that because they know what that sort of a size of a flock looks like?
Exactly. I look at gulls a lot, actually, and when you're faced with a large number of gulls, I tend to probably count in 50s or 100s, so I might count 50 or 100 and then say, okay, it's kind of that area, and then just if I'm using my telescope, just move across the flock going 50, 100, 150, and that's how you get to those sort of round figures. Because it would take you forever to count precisely. I mean, some people have little clickers as well. They can quickly count if they want to, 1, 2, 3, 4, or some people have like 5 clickers on them to be counting different species if they're really into it. But yeah, it is sort of comes with experience and practice.
Practice and experience. Okay, thanks.
I think some people might feel guilty as well, thinking they must count exactly how many birds are there. But at the end of the day, no one's going to be there to argue with you if you got 1 or 2 wrong in terms of, you're 5 over or 5 under. It's an average, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And especially with migrating birds, you've only got that really short period of time, seconds usually, to make that estimate of birds.
And often we tend to underestimate, don't we?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, a good training technique is to take a photograph of a flock of birds and ask people to quickly estimate how many, and nearly always underestimate. It's
really funny talking to people who are not birders and who talk about, oh, my robin comes in my garden all the time and I've got a little blue tit, it always hangs out. And you say to them, well, actually, there's been studies done, and, a garden can have up to 60 blue tits pass through it. And they just can't get their heads around that at all. It's incredible.
Yeah, or blackbirds. There's a really nice story of somebody who was doing a ringing project on their blackbirds in their garden here in Thetford, actually, and they were colouring in them. And one of their blackbirds went to Devon for basically it would breed in the garden in Thetford, and about around Christmas time it would appear in the Devon garden and stay there till around Valentine's Day, then come back to Thetford. And it did that over 2 consecutive winters. It would leave Thetford and go to Devon and come back, and to exactly the same garden in Devon, and they would photograph it and had the colourings on, so they're able to identify it as an individual. And that's really amazing, isn't it? That birds make that kind of movement.
It's also incredible the work that the British Trust for Ornithology have been doing when it comes to studying the cuckoos, and the fact that after satellite tagging these birds, it's come to light that they actually the males especially spend even less time in the UK than originally thought. Because we used to think that they came sort of in May, hung out until July, and then they went.
Oh, some are leaving in June, aren't they? That's incredible.
And then the migration routes they take as well. Some males may fly sort of through France, heading towards Italy, then stop, then head back north again, then stop, then go south slightly, and then stop, but eventually migrate to Africa through Italy. And then the following year, they're migrating through Spain. Yeah,
there's 2 key routes, isn't there? One through France and Spain into sort of Western Africa and down to Congo, and the other through the Po Delta in Italy, which has proven to be a really important stopover place for cuckoo, and then down to the Congo. And even though they take these completely different migration routes, they end up sort of like 50 kilometres apart in the Congo Basin. But one of the key findings from that cuckoo work has actually been about the survival rate of birds. So the birds that take the route through Italy survive, much, much more than the birds that go through France and Spain. The survival rate of those France and Spain birds is actually very, very low.
That's interesting, because you would have thought with Italy, with the hunting, that they would have been much more, prone to be shot than it would be flying through Spain.
Yeah, I think maybe it's something about the quality of stopover sites and the condition that the bird's in for migration. That's why the Po Delta's been highlighted as a really important stopover site on that eastern migration route. Also, perhaps a tendency that the birds that are going east are also coming from further north in the country, where cuckoos are faring better than the birds in the south and east. So it looks like the birds from the south and east are taking that sort of more western route through France and Spain.
Okay. Tell us through even the migration of the blackcap. Because, obviously, historically, it went from north to south and south to north, but now we've got birds from the east heading west.
Yeah, so blackcap's pretty complex, isn't it? And I think, another sort of related pattern is that we've been feeding our garden birds a lot more, providing really good conditions for overwintering blackcaps. So we've got a few blackcaps that are actually not going, perhaps not migrating at all. There's a little bit of evidence of that, but we've got birds from Germany, for example, migrating to Britain to overwinter in our gardens, being fed loads of great food, so they're in really good body condition, and then have a short migration back east to their breeding grounds. They're often arriving first and in very, very good condition. So a real advantage for them to just make that short migration hop rather than going down to sort of southern Spain, North Africa, which would be more traditional.
And also they're going through some anatomical changes, aren't they?
You tell me about that, David.
Well, I don't actually work for the BTO, but no, basically I've been reading that their bills are becoming thicker, bigger, to deal with the bird table, the bird feeders, basically.
Okay.
So over
I haven't heard that.
Years, yeah, it's interesting. Over the past 40 years, they've been slightly evolving the shape of their beak to deal with that. And that's interesting for me because urban birds per se, I've always thought to myself, is there going to be a day one day in the future where, our cities become even bigger and bigger and become mega cities and become islands, and species will just develop within that particular one spot. So you'd have the sort of the Paris greenfinch or what have you. But what's interesting, there was some research done in San Diego few years ago, actually for the last 40 years, I think, or 30 years. There's a bird called the dark-eyed junco. Dark-eyed junco is a type of bunting, and I did have my book here, but I've got tons
Sort of grey and white, aren't they? Various colours. Yeah.
So it's a species of bunting, but it's American, and basically it's found across the whole of Americas, or North America. In the east, it's kind of grey and black and white, but the further west you go, they develop this kind of really sort of rufous mantle, and they look quite different. But anyway, the most westerly population apparently is in the mountains just east of San Diego, and San Diego is on the west coast. And historically, these birds used to winter in the San Diego area, and then in the spring head back to breed in the mountains. And one summer, a young girl noticed that there were juncos in the campus of the university during the summer. She told her father, who was a birder, and he's a scientist as well, an ornithologist, and he kind of dismissed it at first, but then he went to check it out and discovered that they were there. So they started studying these birds and realized that in maybe 10, 15 years, 20 years, they developed to be slightly different to the birds in the mountains. Now, the birds in the mountains had very strong, the males had very strong white outer tail feathers and a very dark head, both of these features used for territorial disputes and what have you. The males in the campus area, the head became more diffused as did the white outer tail feathers, so they weren't so aggressive. In the mountains, they bred once a year. In the campus, they bred 4 times a year. In the campus, they were very sort of, like sparrows feeding off the students' crumbs and stuff, and there's plenty of food because there was lots of, hedgerows and plants and stuff to provide insects. Whereas the birds up in the mountains, when they came down, were very aloof. So what they did, and also the other thing was that the birds in the campus developed a louder song, whereas the birds in the mountains didn't. And also the males in the mountains paid no attention to raising the young, whereas in the campus, they were the best fathers in 2 legs. So what they did was the scientists got a group of these birds from the campus with a group for the birds from the mountain, put them in an aviary together, subjected them to the same daylight, the same food, same conditions, and both populations kept apart, which is fascinating.
Fascinating, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for me at the moment, one of the most amazing things I think that's going on actually is some of the BTO tracking of shorted owls. I've just been, for me, shorted owl is a bird that I really only see in the winter around the coasts, in the Norfolk coast, around the Wash perhaps, or a few inland sites. So, I don't really see them in the breeding season at all, but my colleagues up in Scotland have been fitting satellite tags to the shorted owls and just recording some of their movements. And we've seen a few cases of a female raising a brood in around sort of Perthshire, where they've been monitoring the nest, and quickly leaving the young with the male and going off actually to Norway to make a second breeding attempt. And that's pretty amazing. And just recently, a couple of birds tagged in, females tagged on Arran, have migrated south to France. And just recently, one was found dead in the Western Sahara. And for me, I just can't imagine shorted owls making that kind of journey. It's complete revelation.
Wow.
We're in such exciting times, learning about things. I think tracking especially has just really opened our eyes to what birds are doing.
Wow. Anyone has anyone got
Kaylee.
Sorry, yes. Let me just get you unmuted. You can speak.
Am I here? Hello.
You're there, Jonathan.
Yeah, unfortunately not Kaylee, it's James. I've nicked her account for the
James
day.
even.
I can assure you Kaylee does not have the beard. Just carrying on from what Dawn's saying about the owls and some of the movement, we've got a common sandpiper. We do a project of common sounds down in Farrington Marshes in Portsmouth. And we've been doing it for a few years, and we've had a male that we ringed on the marshes, and every year the same person sends us a picture of this male sitting in a little stream in Norway in all his glory, and then we see him. We can almost time it to the weekend when he'll be back, and we see him again, or he's seen again, or he's caught again Same time, same place, every single year on the marshes, on the little scrape that we use for our wader ringing. And that's, I think we've had it 5 years in a row now.
Oh, fantastic, yeah.
It's amazing, absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Incredible. Any more questions, anyone? Okay, I'm going to move it slightly into a different area for the last part of this conversation. Very last part, actually. How did you, I want to know more about you, Dawn, because, you know, you're a very interesting woman. How did you get into birding?
I've been interested in birds since I was really, really young. I think I grew up in Shropshire, right on the Welsh border, actually, and my grandparents were farmers. And kind of my earliest memories are really actually going around the fields with my grandmother, particularly at harvest time, probably taking lunch out to my granddad on a sort of combine or something and seeing curlews and yellowhammers and that kind of thing. So you know, they always had a bird book in the house, and I don't think they ever had any binoculars, but they knew the common birds around the countryside. So I think from a very early age, just sort of, you know, knowledge of birds, but yeah, just pointing things out. But really from about the age of 6, I started keeping a notebook. So I was really lucky in my little village in Shropshire. We had a young ornithologist group club run by a lady, late June North, who was just, you know, ran it from her house. There was about sort of 10, 15 kids that would turn up, and we didn't go very far, just sort of on walks locally around the village. But it was just that opportunity to meet up with other kids who liked birds and yeah, just go out. So yeah, for me, it's always been birds. All my school projects at school were always about birds. And I don't know, yeah, my parents, you know, later had an interest, but my siblings, not especially.
Yeah. When I talk to Americans, they always say, what's your spark bird? Spark bird. Was there a bird that kicked it all off for you, or was it just a general thing?
I think it's a general thing. I think curlew has a lot of fond memories because they were just in the fields around where we lived, and you know, when I moved to another house, you know, could hear curlew all the time, just bubbling out the back. But there wasn't really a spark bird. I think, you know, I was just always into all birds, and yeah, it was just so exciting when we finally sort of like went somewhere else other than Shropshire. We had a little YOC trip to see red kites at Devil's Bridge. Fondly remember that, and we went to Leighton Moss as well. Just these different habitats, you know, so eye-opening and exciting as a kid. So, you know, 10 or 11 years old. So it's, you know, great opportunity to see new species.
That's good. Natalie, by the way, says has asked, do you have to see a bird to record it, or can you just hear it?
Oh well, if you're doing bird track, then just hearing is absolutely fine. And in fact, you know, if you're doing a survey like your breeding bird survey, again, you just use your ears. You know, when I walk around doing my forest squares, I rarely pick my binoculars up, to be honest, because I'm recording wrens and goldcrests, and I'm just walking at a steady pace and listening and recording each individual bird I hear. So yeah, hearing's good.
Good, okay. Now listen, you're one of the most prominent female birders in the UK, if I may say so. What is it like to be a female birder in the UK these days? Because when I look at the internet, I see people sort of shouting about how, you know, there's lots of sexual discrimination amongst birders and all that sort of stuff. Have you ever come across that?
Not especially. I think I have been extremely lucky to, you know, always be surrounded by, you know, people who wanting to help you, actually. And, you know, for me, one of the biggest moves was actually going to university in Plymouth. You know, and I turned up at Freshers Week, and there was a bird club. I thought, oh, fantastic, there's a bird club here. I was there straight away, and of course, you know, everybody else, you know, was male. There was no other female in my 3 years in Plymouth that joined the club. But, you know, they were welcoming, and today remain actually some, you know, my best of friends. I was pretty clueless, to be honest, coming from a landlocked county like Shropshire. Had loads of enthusiasm, but, you know, they'd come from coastal counties and were much, much better birders. But they were so kind and encouraging, and just sort of, you know, took me everywhere, and I tagged along, and they told me what they knew and passed it on. I think, you know, we've all had days when you find something, you know, I do remember finding a short-toed lark on the Isles of Scilly, probably sort of about, I don't know when it was, 89 or something, 1989, 1990, quite, you know, early on. I was pretty young, and I was by myself and I found it. I think it was the first short-toed lark I'd ever seen, but I knew what it was. And it was on Peninis Head, and I walked back down. I didn't even have a mobile phone in those days. I did meet some guys, and I said, there's a short-toed lark in the field up there, and they kind of very disbelieving and walked off. And yeah, I went off and found my friends and said, look, there's a short-toed lark, and they came back, and there, of course, there was a short-toed lark in the field. And so yeah, occasionally you do get it. You know, my husband's a birder, and sometimes they'll ask him, or you know, if I say something, they just they'll ask him again. But to be honest, it's very, very seldom. I think for me, yeah, I just meet really nice people, and you know, I think I'm passionate about birds. I love birds, and hopefully that always shines through that you're genuinely interested. And I've been, you know, very well accepted. Yeah, as you say, I've worked at BTA a long time now, since '92, in fact. So, yeah, pretty ancient, as you say, David. But you know, I've met such fantastic people through that time, volunteers and staff, who you know give you opportunities, and I've done reasonably well for myself, you know, throughout my career at BTO. Been given opportunities like, you know, the Bird Atlas, for example, was for me sort of, you know, a massive highlight of my career to be able to lead that kind of project. Yeah, it's great.
That's good. Now, what advice would you give other budding women ornithologists who want to follow in your footsteps, or you know, be some kind of leading light in this this ornithological world?
Well, I think, you know, you just remain true to your passion, isn't it? I think, you know, just love birds for what they are, and just keep at it. I mean, you'll meet really good friends along the way. I'm sure will become your lifelong friends as well, because, you know, you have such similar interests. Like you and I, David, we've known each other since the mid-90s, and even though you live miles away now, you know, we still keep in touch, and we can talk about birds at any time, and just pick up those conversations. So I think, yeah, just keep looking at birds and enjoy it.
Superb. Okay, any questions? Because I'm going to wrap it up by asking, I've got this kind of tradition now. I've only done two. This is my second one, but I'm still saying it's a tradition that I'm starting off, which is a series of questions that I ask my guest before we say tatty bye. So has anyone got any burning questions before I do this? Okay. Well, I used to watch a program called In the Actor's Studio, which was presented by this guy who actually died recently, but he would interview people like Robert De Niro and Jodie Foster, all these big names, in front of a studio audience of film students, and film students would ask all the questions about, you know, techniques and stuff, and also he would ask the actor about their favorite films and stuff. But at the end of it, it always asked these weird questions. One question was, what is your favorite curse word? And the other one was, what would you say to St. Peter when you get to the pearly gates? Well, I'm not going to ask Dawn those questions. I'm going to ask Dawn instead, what's your favorite bird, Dawn?
Well, that's really easy because it's a Mediterranean gull.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. What's your favorite fish?
Well, I don't really have a favourite fish, but I'll tell you pike, because I saw 3 pike last week, and I don't really see very many fish, and they were impressive, huge, and yeah, truly magnificent.
What's your favourite invertebrate?
Well, I'll go for painted lady, because they're cool, aren't they?
What's your favourite mammal?
Brown hare.
Any reason?
Well, I see them quite a lot around here. You know, I live in Thetford, and Norfolk, Suffolk. Brex is pretty good for brown hare, and I feel pretty lucky actually to see them regularly. I mean, I saw some yesterday. They are spectacular mammals, and yeah, I mean, mountain hare actually is close because I don't get to see them very often, but they're pretty special too.
What's your favourite plant?
Well, that's quite hard, isn't it? I'm really quite into plants, but I'll go for pasque flower actually, because I remember going to a very well-known place for pasque flower called Barnack, just in sort of East Midlands, Peterborough way, And I was completely, I've never seen one before. And I was going, thinking I'll have to like look hard for pasque-flower at this site. And they blew my mind. They were just everywhere. And there's such a sort of beautiful sort of purpley flower and with a yellow centre, and there were just thousands. And I took a billion photographs of them because they were just so beautiful.
Fantastic. And the final question in this weird series of questions is, if notwithstanding lockdown and coronavirus, if you could be anywhere in this world at this precise moment, where would you be?
That's really difficult, David. I think it would have to be somewhere that there was good visible migration, because that's what I'm really into. And it could be Portland Bill on a good day. But I was thinking of somewhere like Cape Kaliakra in Bulgaria, where I went to last autumn.
Wow.
Family holiday, and that was really impressive. I thought it'd be lovely to go there in the spring and see what's happening. So I'll go for Eastern Bulgaria.
Fantastic. That's a great choice. Okay, well, listen, before we say goodbye completely, I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in today. I hope you've all enjoyed it. It'd be great to get your comments. This In Conservation With series continues tomorrow with Darren Woodhead, who's an amazing watercolorist, and he's going to be painting live on stage as we talk, as well as trying to impart some knowledge to get you painting as well under lockdown. On Wednesday, we've got Chris Watson. He's a sound man. He's actually David Attenborough's sound man. So if you've got any questions you want to ask about David Attenborough, I mean, obviously make it, sort of dress it up to make it feel like Chris is included, but you can actually ask those questions as well. He's on Wednesday. And then on Thursday, I'm talking to, and by the way, Tuesday and Wednesday, same time as today, 4:30. Thursday, I'm talking to this amazing ornithologist called Ken Kaufman. He's an American based in Ohio, and he is like the Bill Oddie of America, but not the same way, but he's like one of the most famous birders in America today. And he started off his life crossing America as a 16-year-old penniless boy, writing about all the birds he saw, and the book that he produced it's a legend now, and he's written a load of books. He's a bird artist as well, and he's going to be talking about how he kind of engages with young people, especially in America, to get them involved. And on Friday, I'm speaking to a young man called Jason Ward, another American. He's an Afro-American, actually. He's from Atlanta, and he's dubbed as America's urban birder because he's actually out there trying to get people in urban areas involved with nature. So I'll be talking to him about his work and how he gets actually the ethnic minority people involved as well. So that's a lot of stuff happening this week. Next week, I'm hoping to get people like Tony Juniper in to talk about the peregrines. Some of you may know about that, and a few other people. So keep an eye on the website. But Dawn, listen, I thank you so much for coming along today. It's been absolutely amazing to chat with you about your work and to hear your advice on surveying. One quick question: what advice would you give us all to get through lockdown?
Just enjoy the birds in your back garden, and yeah, if you're able to get out for a little walk, then go and enjoy. I think everybody's really appreciating what's on their doorstep right now, so that's what I'm doing, trying to spend my lunch outside and seeing what I can see.
Good. Okay. Well, listen, thank you all for turning up.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you as well. And be safe, stay indoors, and don't forget, keep on looking up. We'll meet again.
Take care, David. Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye.